This is a demonstration of how to create a topographic map from a set of points of elevation. So in this image here, we have a whole bunch of points of just elevation. So for example, this at this exact point, we're saying that somebody has measured the elevation here and it is 48. And we'll just say that these are all in feet to make it easy. So we have, for example, point of 48 feet here, 41 feet here, 65 feet here, 55 feet here, etc. So each of these points is a specific elevation that's been measured. We're going to assume that we don't know everything else around those points. We're going to have to interpolate between them to come up with a reasonable explanation of what the topography is in this area. So when we're going to make a topo map, there are a couple things that we need to figure out first. So first we're going to decide what contour interval to use, and we're just going to use a 10-foot contour interval because that's easy. Remember that sea level is always 0. So we don't have sea level on this map, and so there's not going to be any 0 elevation lines. The lowest elevation that we have is 25 feet over here, and we don't have anything that's below 20 feet in elevation, so the lowest contour line that we're going to draw is going to be the 30-foot contour. The highest point that we have here is 65 feet, so the highest contour line that we're going to draw is going to be 60 feet because we have nothing higher than 70, so there won't be any 70 line, so we need the 60 line to show or to be able to incorporate the 65. So now that we know that basically we're going to draw every contour line between 30 and 60 feet, or from 30 up to 60 feet. There isn't any rule about where to start when you're drawing your contour lines, but the easiest thing to do is to kind of look at it and get an overall idea of what we think is going on here, and then to start with what we think is just going to be the easiest. Generally, contour lines stay relatively parallel to each other, so if you start with the easiest ones and then you kind of follow from there, you're probably going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on. So in this area, I can look at this and I can say, okay, well, our highest elevation is this area. Our lowest elevation is over here or down at the bottom. We have a creek coming through here. We'll talk about the creek a little bit later. But we know that overall, it seems like the elevation is increasing up from the bottom part of the picture up towards the upper right. The next thing that we're going to do is start drawing contours. I strongly recommend that you do this in pencil so that you can erase afterwards. One, because people always make mistakes. I always make mistakes when I'm doing these, so it's good to be able to erase. And also because you might want to put in some little intermediate points along the way, and then at the end you're going to want to have nice smoothly drawn lines, and so you want to be able to erase any points that you've drawn or any kind of sharp kinks that you have in your contour lines. Okay, so let's get started. So in this exercise, we are not connecting the dots. In fact, we are figuring out where numerically the lines that are the value of our contour lines should be around or between these points, and then connecting those places. So let's start with the 65 here. So the kind of intermediate points for the first couple points have been drawn for you just to help you get an idea of what we're doing. So if we go here, we say we have 65 here, 59 here, and this line has been drawn just as kind of a rough guide to give you an idea of what's going on. So we'll say, okay, this would be 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65. So if 59 is here, 65 is here, 60 is going to be about here. Similarly, we have 55 here, 65 here, 60 should be numerically just exactly in between, so that's going to be about where this little dash is drawn. And then the same thing above that, 55 to 65, 60 should be pretty much just exactly in between. And then for between 53 to 65, well, the 60 should be just a tad closer to the 65, and so we're going to put it somewhere along here. So let's draw that actually in as a little dot right here. I'm going to make my pen a little bit bigger. And then we know that we have a 60 here, and a 60 here, and a 60 here, and maybe we'll use a different color just to make it stand out a little bit more. And then we're just going to connect these lines. And again, I didn't quite connect that well, so I'll go back and connect this. And now we're going to draw a little, make a little hole in here, and we're going to just label this as 60. The next one that we're going to do is going to be our 50-foot contour line. So we know that our 50-foot contour line is going to go just above 48 and just above 48 here. It's going to go pretty much halfway in between 45 and 55. It's going to go a little closer to the 53. Remember that our contour lines cannot start or stop off in the middle of the map. They cannot cross, so we're going to start our contour line off our map. We are going to bring it around, connect to all of these. We're going to leave a little space to mark it as 50, and then bring it off as well. So this is our 50-foot contour line. The next one that we're going to do is going to be the 40, and so it's going to go a little closer to the 43 than to 33, right halfway in between 45 and 35. It's going to go closer to the 41 than to the 48, and closer to the 42 than the 48. It should be probably a little closer to the 42 there, but we can fix that later. And then it's going to come down through here. I'm going to leave a gap here at the creek, and we'll come back and talk about that in just a minute. And then it's going to continue out this way. So the creek, we know that rivers and creeks erode downwards into the ground. And so wherever we have a river or a creek, we're going to have a low point there. In order to represent that on the map, if you were walking along this line here, then what would actually happen is that if you kept walking in a straight line, you'd actually start going downwards in elevation until you got to the creek, and then back upwards again. So if you wanted to stay at the same elevation and not go down into the creek bed, straight down into the creek bed, you wanted to stay at this we're at the 40 feet of elevation, you would actually need to walk uphill or up the stream bed and then back down along the other side. So you'd actually have to walk farther kind of up alongside the actual hill to be staying at the same elevation, because if you went straight, you'd go down into the creek bed and then back up again. So the way that we represent that is we draw a V like this that points up the stream. So the point of the V should be up the stream, and it should cross the stream right at the apex or the sharp point of the V. I'm actually going to clean this up a little bit now that I've drawn over it so that it's just one actual line, but we want it to be a V that points upstream and again crosses right at the apex. Okay, so this is the rule of V's, where the contour lines are going to make a V that points upstream. Again, so in this case, kind of an upside down V with a point going upstream. And then the last line that we're going to draw is going to be our 30 line. We know that it has to touch our 30 point right here. And then it's going to make this V upstream, and that it cannot cross the 32. So we know it's going to be a pretty small V. So we're going to come in like this. It's going to come near the 32 and then come back down, go right in between the 32 and the 28 here. And then we know that it has to come in between the 35 and the 25 here. And there we go. So I'm going to erase this again so that I can put in the 40 marker for that, the 40 label for that. And here we have an example of a pretty simple contour map that has a circle that denotes the peak here, and then we have these contour lines. And even though they stop off the map, the implication is that they continue all the way around, and that off the map they're going to make a completed circle or a completed loop. Okay, so that's the basics of making a contour map.